Good evening, everyone, and welcome to tonight's T2M Spring Has Sprung webinar for Queensland. My name's Sarah Hickman, and I'm the Engagement Officer for Biosecurity Queensland in the Vimiri team. As mentioned, spring has sprung and bees are active, plants are flowering, and it's an important time to check for mites and continue to do so. We appreciate your attendance tonight as Mr. Rob Stevens, Manager of Biosecurity, Queensland's Varroa Mite Innovation and Resilience Initiative, leads our presentation, providing an overview on the current state of Varroa Mite in Queensland and other Vimiri activities we're undertaking to support the beekeeping industry. I'll be presenting further on supporting the beekeeping industry, including staffing updates, the Biosecurity Champions Network, and telling you more about the Varroa Development Offices. Paul Garland, Extension and Engagement Coordinator with the National Varroa Mite Management Program, will also be presenting this evening with an update on Varroa Development Officers' engagements and the National Virus Benchmarking Project. We also have a few other staff members online and behind the scenes to help answer any questions you may have. Before we get started, I would like to let you know this meeting is being recorded and draw your attention to a few housekeeping items. To ensure our timing together is positive and productive, we ask that all participants maintain professional and civil discourse throughout the evening. Our presentation will run for approximately 45 minutes and will be followed by the question and answer session. Throughout the webinar, feel free to use the chat function to ask any questions and we'll address these as they come or at the end. I'd like to start by respectfully acknowledging Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people as the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet, and I pay my respects to their elders, past and present. I extend that respect to all Aboriginal people and Torres Strait Islander people here today. I will now hand over to Rob Stevens.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll try and keep my update relatively brief today for once and allow time for our talented VDO team to focus on some of the practical beekeeping issues as we move into spring in Queensland. We'll go first slide, please, Sarah. So as of this morning, there were officially 255 confirmed cases of Varroa destructor in Queensland, and that's across 16 local government areas. So last month in September, we had 62 new infested premises, and that's from 102 positive detections. So that means about 40 of those detections were secondary, where they've had Varroa for at least a month or two. So we're only 8 or 9 days into October. So far, we've had 13 new infested premises, and that's from about 30 detections. Those of you that have been following at home and watching the heat map might have noticed that as of this morning, Bundaberg Shire has now gone hot. So all up 255. You'll see this bar chart that shows that the numbers on the left-hand side is Brisbane, the lighter blue, and the darker blue in the middle is the Lockyer Valley, which is our first detection point in Queensland. And you can see in the last month or so that those numbers have nearly doubled in Brisbane, and we expect that to have exponential growth now that the weather has warmed up, and we expect to see hundreds and hundreds of detections in the southeast Queensland in the coming months, unfortunately. Next slide, please. So most of you should know how to access our heat map by now. We will throw the link in the chat for those of you that might not have come across this yet. Each little square of the map represents what we call a graticule. That is about 100 square kilometres. When you click on the map, it will show you how many detections have occurred in that 100 square kilometres. So that data is submitted through B123 and also our active government-led surveillance, and it's all de-identified, and the data is validated, like I said, de-identified and aggregated to produce this map each night, whereas some of the other jurisdictions are only updating their map weekly at this point. So unfortunately, on 23rd of September, the New South Wales Varroa heat map was shut down and is no longer publicly available online. This map was a really valuable tool to track the spread in the first 3 years post-detection in New South Wales. However, in recent months, a decline in usage of the map and fewer monitoring reports, it was no longer really an accurate reflection of recent detections. Conversely, here in Queensland and in other jurisdictions, we're at a very different stage of that invasion curve, and we're seeing increased levels of reporting, which is really good to see. So Victoria, for example, has seen many new detections in the last couple of months as beekeepers start to carry out their post-winter inspections, and other jurisdictions like Tasmania and South Australia have also just made their heat mapping go live as well, which looks almost identical to that of Queensland. So at this stage, South Australia's only had the one detection, and that was directly related to movement of Queensland hives for almond pollination. So all those Queensland hives have now returned home or ventured into New South Wales. We'll go next slide, please. So our heat map is only as good as the data that goes into it, and I'd really like to thank the nearly 3,000 beekeepers who have submitted to B123 since our first detection in March. So that means that we've had nearly 14,500 individual hives tested, and that's from apiaries with over or just under 61,500 hives. So look, the weather is warming up now. There's no excuses. Beekeepers should be getting into their hives, getting into that spring management. We would like to see those monthly reporting figures up over 500 a month, where the last 3 or 4 months we've had about 450, 500 reports. Moving into spring and summer, we want this to keep on growing with the amount of beekeepers submitting to the B123 system. Go next slide, please. So some of you might have noticed some changes to the B123 survey form in recent weeks. We have enhanced our ability to receive photos when you submit your B123 entry. That will now go directly to our team. We've also changed in the back end, when you're submitting, that you can now have an additional option in your surveillance type, and that is called Other. So that's going to cover things like we were getting some interest from beekeepers doing CO2 testing and things like that. So if it's anything other than the listed surveillance methodologies, you can now click Other. And the more important thing that we've added is mite loading now. So really, really important that if you are doing a threshold level of testing, like alcohol wash, soapy water, sugar shake, if you are proportionally testing 300 bees or half a cup of bees, we would like you to enter the number of mites, and that's going to help us track spread over time and help get a little bit more information on that spread mapping. Next slide, please. So we can use this data to better understand the Varroa spread. So we can use this in the back end. Our map that you can see on screen clearly shows Varroa levels that are above threshold, and also other areas where the Varroa hasn't been present as long. So over time, this is going to help us inform where reinfestation is at. Go next slide, please. So we're also still working on permanent changes to our Queensland legislation under the Biosecurity Act and the subordinate biosecurity regulation. We are trying to continue to slow the spread and support business continuity though. So that's being done by simplifying the interstate permit system. So that's allowing multi-use permits, long-term permits for beekeepers to move live bees and equipment from interstate. In the background, we are working on those permanent reg changes, which will involve permanently removing the Varroa mite biosecurity zone and also reclassifying Varroa destructor as Category 2 restricted matter. Basically, what that means for you is it still will be what we refer to as notifiable. When you have Varroa, you are required to report it, and that can be done through using B123. Next slide, please. I'll give you a quick update on some of the other activities that the Vimeri team has been up to as well. We'll go next slide. So recently, Vimeri hosted a bee biosecurity roundtable recall session. This was really important to update stakeholders on the responses of our 2-day biosecurity roundtable that we held back in May. We had about 39 participants. They came from beekeepers, both recreational, commercial, peak industry bodies, government, researchers, pollination-reliant industries. Some of the themes we covered were compliance, regulation, trust, pollination security, integrated pest management, research gaps, tools and education, and financial and economic considerations. So we also had a bit of a deep dive into shared responsibility and explaining to beekeepers what that means to them. and also nutting out what we are calling the Roundtable Advisory Group, which will be a group that we're going to continue engagement with as we move through the VMIRI program for the next 18 months. We've sorted out the terms of reference and had nominations for participants of that roundtable group. So invitations went out in the last week or so. So far, we've had about 7 respondents. We're hoping to get that number to about 10. If everything goes to plan, we'll be holding that first roundtable advisory group meeting at the end of this month or early November. Next slide, please. Also, just quickly highlight the work we're doing with our behavioural analysis research. So this is really important to monitor the progress and the success of our engagement activities and explore opportunities to improve them for the life of our program, which runs till 30 June 2027. So this helps us to understand some of those beekeeping behaviours, their current levels of knowledge, and where we need to improve our communication strategies with the different user groups here in Queensland. So I'm pleased to say that we've recently completed this year's activities, doing both qualitative and quantitative research. So we did 12 interviews, which went for about 30 minutes with both recreational and commercial beekeepers. And we also put out a more broad survey that went to about 146 respondents to that survey. So that included 122 recreational and 24 commercial. So our external supplier, Ernst & Young, will hopefully give us the report on that in the next couple of weeks. And in the coming month or so, we'll start to report that back to yourselves in industry. And we'll probably replicate this this research in next financial year, I should say, just to make sure that the messaging we're doing is working and that it's getting through to beekeepers. Next slide, please. Oh, actually here, I might quickly hand over to our Senior Project Officer, Karen Hartley. She's going to highlight some of the good work we've been doing in our Community Bee Innovation Fund, or our grants program. So over to you, Karen.
Thanks, Rob. So I just wanted to update everyone on the round 1 successful grant applicants. So they're sharing in more than $140,000 of grant funds to undertake their projects. So the QBA project focuses on educating, supporting and surviving Varroa together. They will ensure the latest Varroa mite information is freely available to all Queensland beekeepers and will provide practical in-apiary training events as well. Through training events, the Gold Coast Amateur Beekeepers Society will increase the capability of Queensland beekeepers to incorporate biotechnical management options such as brood interruptions and queen rearing into their Varroa mite integrated pest management strategies. And the Queensland fruit and vegetable growers will facilitate a series of workshops to meet a need to support pollination-reliant growers. So Queensland pollination-reliant growers will be engaged and educated about the Varroa mite life cycle, its impact on bees, pollination, produce yield and quality, and how growers can actively engage in partnerships with beekeepers for those pollination services. And finally, Queensland beekeepers and the public will be actively engaged and educated about the seriousness and management of Varroa mite by the Southern Beekeepers Association. So that organisation will host practical field days and attend community events to encourage widespread understanding and best practice monitoring and management. So those are the 4 round 1 grant recipients. So that's really good news, and those projects are currently underway. Round 2 assessments and approvals are currently underway, and an announcement about the successful applicants is anticipated in December or January. In terms of round 3, it is the final round, and it's anticipated to open for applications on the 19th of January for 6 weeks. So if you'd like to keep up to date with round 3, please just have a look at that webpage in the chat, and happy to receive any inquiries. Thanks, Rob.
All right, we'll get next slide, please. And I think we're back over to you, Sarah.
Yeah, so thanks for that update, Rob and Karen. So this next section, I'll be introducing some familiar faces in different roles and also the support that's available moving forward. Before we get into the details, I'd like to start by highlighting the support available for beekeepers across Queensland. Through the Varroa Mite Innovation and Resilience Initiative, or VMIRI, and with the appointment of a new engagement officer, ongoing support will be continuing through until June 2027. If you have any questions or need any assistance, you can email varroa@dpi.qld.gov.au at any time. In addition, a new Bee Biosecurity Officer, or BBO, is available to provide specialist support. We also have a network of volunteer biosecurity champions across Queensland. These are recreational beekeepers who are trained to help fellow beekeepers with biosecurity advice, and you can connect with them through your local club. The National Varroa Mite Management Program has also a resilience officer available to support those impacted by Varroa mite, though this role will finish in December 2025. For further details, you can visit varroa.org.au. And finally, over the next few months, your Varroa Development Officers, or VDOs, will continue to be your key support resource. So there's a strong network available for people and programs here to help, and in the following slides, I'll explain each of these in a little more detail. For the last 12 months, I've been working as a Varroa Development Officer for the Lockyer Valley, Darling Downs and Southwest regions. However, I've now stepped into a new role as Queensland's Engagement Officer with the VMIRI program, which is a 2-year position, and I'm really excited about the opportunity it brings. My background is in biosecurity, where I worked with the Department of Forestry and Fisheries for 8 years. My passion for bees, though it goes back even further. My grandfather kept bees for over 50 years and passed that knowledge to my stepdad and then on to me. Before moving back to Australia for the VDO role, I worked with a commercial beekeeper in New Zealand, and that's where I came face to face with Varroa for the first time. Like many of you, I'm deeply passionate about bees and care about the future of both our bees and our beekeeping community. In this new role, I'll be actively involved in supporting the Biosecurity Champions Network, which I'll talk more about shortly, and I'll also be working closely with pollination-reliant industries. We're pleased to announce and introduce Queensland's Bee Biosecurity Officer, BBO, Tonya Johnson. Tonya will be acting in the BBO role from October through to December, with a permanent position expected to be advertised next week. Many of you already know Tonya from her work as Varroa Development Officer over the past year for the Sunshine Coast region. She also brings extensive commercial beekeeping experience and a strong background in honeybee pests and diseases. The BBO role focuses on supporting industry compliance with the Australian Honeybee Industry Biosecurity Code of Practice, promoting good hive health and ensuring beekeepers meet their GBO or their general biosecurity obligation, with a particular attention to managing American foul brood. The Biosecurity Champion Network was set up about 18 months ago to help beekeepers improve their understanding of biosecurity and best practices for pest and disease management. Each beekeeping club in Queensland nominated 1 or 2 biosecurity champions to represent their members. These champions act as a contact point for local beekeepers, whether it's to share concerns, ask questions, or seek support. This dedicated group meets monthly with Biosecurity Queensland to discuss the latest updates and industry statistics. Right now, we're in the middle of a refresh, and I've stepped into leading the network. We'll see some new faces joining alongside many of the original champions who continue to represent their clubs. We're really grateful for their commitment. The champions play an important role in keeping clubs and members up to date with what's happening across the state. They also provide a two-way channel, helping Biosecurity Queensland share information quickly, while also giving us valuable feedback about emerging issues in the beekeeping community. As the VDO program winds down in the coming months, the Biosecurity Champions will help fill some of those gaps, offering good information, biosecurity knowledge, and most importantly, a supportive network for beekeepers. The Varroa Development Officers, or VDOs, were deployed around Australia as part of the Transition to Management program. Here in Queensland, we've had 6 VDOs working across the state for the past 12 months. That number has now reduced to 3.5 as some of our VDOs have moved into other roles within the program. Our videos provide free advice, run in-field demonstrations, and host mini workshops and field days for both recreational and commercial beekeepers. Across Queensland, we currently have Keith, who is part-time and covers the Gold Coast up to Brisbane and out to Ipswich, and Kathy, who was part-time and is now full-time, also covering the same area as Keith. Gavin, who covers Central Queensland, and then we've got Carla, based in North Queensland, covers down to Central as well. They're only around for a short while longer, so if you're a beekeeper and would like a visit, a demonstration, or just have a chat about Varroa, please get in touch, and you can contact the team by emailing varroa@dpi.qld.gov.au. All right, so I'm going to hand over to Paul for our next section from the National Varroa Mite Management Program. Thanks, Paul.
Hi everyone, I'm just going to share a little bit about Queensland's component of the National Varroa Mite Management Program activities we've been up to. Next slide. The videos are our main activity, our primary thing that we're doing, the engagements. But our focus has been slowly shifting towards group activities wherever possible. On the left there, you can see a map of the actual number of engagements / interactions that we've done. There's 1,444 interactions there. And in those interactions, we've actually supported and educated 7,120 participants. On the right there, I've got a map, a grid, or a pie chart that shows it's a distribution of that 7,000. So there's 25% of those were part of the National Varroa Mite Management formal workshops that we had earlier in the program. And then the green section have 35% of our interactions have been with participants of 9 or less, mostly 1s and 2s. And then 40% of those engagements have been 10 plus. Highlighting the increasing in the larger groups because we're really trying to improve the number of people we're reaching as the video part of the programs comes to an end in December. We just want to make sure we get the best bang for buck for Queensland as we can and educate and support the most number of beekeepers. Next slide, please. Next national activity is the National Virus Benchmarking Project, and I want to thank all the beekeepers that supported with providing samples of bees for that activity. You can see on the map there where's the distribution of many of those samples, all those samples came from. You can sort of see how it's fairly representative of where the footprint of our beekeepers are. So the main point about the virus activity project was to really get a clear understanding of what viruses and what virus loads are out there prior to Varroa mite getting here. So we can actually have a clearer picture of see what effects Varroa mite has on our virus populations. Next slide, please. So on the left-hand side is actually the national collective data. You can see that the green colour is sac brood virus, the red colour is lake cyanide viruses, and then the black queen cell virus in yellow and Israeli acute paralysis virus in blue. If you look at the other graph on the right-hand side, it's just the separation of each of the states and how they actually fared with each one of those particular viruses. And you see that where Queensland is fairly high on each one of those, different to most of the other states, that the Israeli acute paralysis virus is a lot lower than Queensland. But yeah, just so the results for this only came out a couple of weeks ago, and so we're slowly progressing with preparing the actual reports for those samples to go back to the beekeepers where those samples came from, so they can get a good understanding of what they had. Next slide, please. One of the other activities we've done is the COLOS survey, the Colony Collapse Survey. So the 2024 results have just been released. So we had 89 participants provided their responses to that survey. 25 of those were commercial and 64 were recreational beekeepers. And without too much surprise, on the surface, you can see that the small hive beetle was the Queensland's highest contribution to colony loss. New South Wales is a bit of a different story where they're looking more like Varroa. So that the actual survey has many facets to it. There's lots of questions in it. So that information will slowly be looked at and understood. And information will come out in due course as it to support beekeepers with information. The value of that is amazing for us understanding things. So the next Colos survey for 2025 is open now. So please have a look at that survey. The QR code is there on the screen. Spread it around to whatever beekeepers you can get. The more we can get, the more representative we can be of Queensland's beekeepers. And the survey closes on the 1st of November. So it's autonomous. It only takes about 15 minutes to do, even less if you're a recreational beekeeper. Yeah, so thank you. Next slide. So this is the spot where we section where we let the VDOs have their highlight what they're finding for challenges with beekeepers, especially what questions they're asking, what things need to be answered. So this is another way of doing so, and especially in light of spring management, we're actually covering these elements. So we're going to talk about clarifying the registration process and getting out of beekeeping well, if that's your plan. The all-important integrated pest management, Varroa mite impacts on hives and what we're seeing, pollination events and their considerations, and swarm management. So I'll hand over to Carla now to do the first section. Next slide.
Evening, everyone. I'm here to talk to you about registration. So if you're not registered, now is a good time to get registered. Being registered helps you keep in the loop with all things bees, not just Varroa mite. There's a couple of QR codes here on the slide. The first one, the account registration. It's if you know that you're not registered, you can use this QR code. It will take you through to set up a personal profile within the system. Once you've got your personal profile, you will get an email asking you to activate your account, and from there you can register as a biosecurity entity and get your hive ID number. The second QR code is your biosecurity entity registration. If you are already registered, you can use this to go check your status, update your contact details like phone number or email, and also your hive numbers. Coming with Varroa coming into the state, it's important that we know how many hives there are around the state. Just a quick reminder, setting up an account is only your first step. You still need to register as a biosecurity entity and get your hive identification number or HIN number to be fully registered. The DPI customer service is there to help you if you need a hand. Their contact 13 25 23. Next slide. Thanks, Sarah. So another fun topic, if you decide that you don't want to beekeep anymore now that Varroa is in your area. I've recently been through this with a friend of mine in the last 6 months. We had many conversations about Varroa mite, his biosecurity and moral obligations. After a few months thinking about it, he came to me and said, "So Carla, how do I kill my bees?" This wasn't a conversation I was expecting to have, but after another long chat, he decided to sell his bees. He's retired and he travels often going away for 3 or 4 months. So he knew he couldn't monitor his hives as regularly as he needed to, and he didn't want to be that mite bomb infecting other beekeepers within his area. He has now sold his hive. He was very emotional, and it was a very hard decision for him to make. But he has stayed connected with the local club and with other beekeepers here in Townsville. It's important that we support any beekeepers that decide that they don't want to beekeep anymore. It's not an easy decision to make, and we really need to support them, whether helping them go through the process or just being there to let them talk to us. A couple of great sites to use if you decide to leave the industry is Business Queensland. You can just type in Business Queensland, type in beekeeping, and it'll take you to everything you need to know about beekeeping in Queensland. The other one is your varroa.org.au website. It's a good website for everything to do with Varroa, but if you're deciding to leave your industry, you can just find a fact sheet there that offers you practical advice, contacts, and we'll put you in contact with Jamie, the resilience officer. And finally, don't forget to deregister if you decide you're not going to beekeep anymore. We really need to have an accurate tally of bees in the state, and it'll stop you getting unwanted emails and phone calls. You can also use the Business Queensland website to get out of beekeeping, to deregister, sorry. Next slide, please, Sarah. So what to consider if you're deciding to get out of bees. Monitoring your hives if you think that you can't monitor as much as you want to or need to, and being that mite bomb, being concerned about using chemicals or the increase in costs it will be to be a beekeeper. Once you've made the decision to stop beekeeping, then you've got to look at what you're going to do next or how you're going to do it. So inspect and clean your equipment, make sure everything's in good condition, decide whether you're going to sell your hives or give them away. If you're selling, please set a fair value and think about where you're going to sell them, the local bee club, the online platforms, or word of mouth. And finally, the last thing that we need to think about is euthanizing hives. Again, not a fun subject, but something that can be the most responsible decision you make. If you're in an area that has Varroa mite, there may be no interest in people buying the hive, or if you're heavily infested, as I said, euthanasia may be the most responsible option. Some of the methods for euthanizing is freezing. It would be good to have a freezer big enough to do that. A soapy water method and an unleaded petrol method. Instructions for all these are on the Business Queensland website, along with the permits that you need for the soapy water and the unleaded petrol. And you can get the permits also at the APVMA website. I have had to euthanize hives previously because of AFB. It's not easy to do, but very, very necessary. So again, it's important for us to support beekeepers who decide to do this, help them where we can. Okay, thank you. Tonya will continue from here. Thanks, everyone.
Evening, everyone. Well, it's only fitting that my first slide that I'm presenting tonight is about our general biosecurity obligations. So managing Varroa is a shared responsibility across the entire beekeeping sector. All beekeepers have a general biosecurity obligation, and that's we must make sure that our activities prevent or minimise the spread of honeybee pests and diseases or contaminants such as infected materials within our apiary or other apiaries. How do we do this? We practice good hygiene, so come clean, go clean. Frequent hive health checks, so monitoring your hives for Varroa, AFB, EFB, all of that kind of fun stuff. Implementing barrier systems within apiaries. And also good record keeping, so writing down your monitoring events when you put in your chemicals, when you take them out, and also movement records where you're shifting your hives to, but also buying and selling your hives. And then also reporting. So continue to notify new infestations, as Varroa is a notifiable pest, through B123. Next slide, please, Sarah. So hopefully you guys already know about IPM, but I'm just going to refresh your memories. Integrated pest management, it's a series of actions or a series of steps to suppress a pest in its environment. And in this case, it's our Varroa in our hives. So the first step is knowledge. It's great that you're all here tonight. You're wanting to get that knowledge. We've had workshops, we've got videos, we've got a lot of different places that you can get that knowledge. The second step is the monitoring, so alcohol wash, soapy water wash, and the drone uncapping. Next step up in our triangle is the cultural control. So cultural control is queen genetics, yes, so resistant queens to Varroa, but it's also about having good beekeeping practices. So strong hives, managing small hive beetle control, all of these kinds of things. The next step up is our mechanical tools or actions. So drone frames, sticky mats, queen isolation cages. And then finally, the one we really don't want to go to, but sometimes it happens, non-synthetic and synthetic treatments. You can see as we go up the triangle, it does get more expensive and more toxic. Next slide, please. So what can we do to suppress mites in our hives? We've got the options of queen caging, screen bottom boards, vented bottom boards, and something sticky at the bottom like a sticky mat, drone trapping, culling, and other methods such as swarm control, splitting, brood sacrifice, you name it, there's a lot. It is important to remember with these methods that they do include specific guidelines to follow. They require both knowledge and dedicated time to be effective. Next slide, please. So what non-synthetic chemicals can we use to treat Varroa mite? We've got the option of Formic Pro, which is formic acid derived from ants. We've got AP Guard, which is thymol, derived from the plant thyme. And then we've got AP Bioxyl, which is oxalic acid, derived from plants. Those are our non-synthetic chemicals we can use. Next slide, please. What synthetic chemicals can we use to suppress mite numbers? We've got Varroa, Apistan. They are the colour pink because they are the same, they target the Varroa mite in the same way. And then we've got our Amitraz products, so Apitraz and Apivar, they target Varroa mite in the same way. And so to avoid resistance, it's very, very important that we rotate these colours just like it shows on our ARBIC treatment table. It's colour-coded for a reason. And the other thing here is the importance between fast release and slow release. The Varroa and Apistan, they'll drop mites within about the first 80%. They'll drop 80% of mites within the first 24 hours. And one other thing here is the until we can get full registration for these products, the permit overrides the labels. So read the permit for your instructions on how to apply them for your hive, to your hive. Next slide, please, Sarah. The next step, guys, and is what I'll be doing right now if I were you. If I didn't have Varroa, even if I've got Varroa, I'd be planning. These are some of the treatment, plan templates that are going around at the moment. You can find them through your videos online at varroa.org, or you can create your own. But that's all from me, and I'm going to pass it over to our video, Kathy.
Thanks. So this slide shows us the two different distinct phases of Varroa mite building up and then becoming established. And the point here is that different parts of our state might be just at the start of the wave now in some regions. Other regions might be a bit more advanced in terms of the build-up, whereas in other regions still yet to start building up. What we do anticipate is that our capacity to manage Varroa mite should level out a bit once we reach the established phase where Varroa is widespread across the state. So please be vigilant, keep monitoring and be proactive. On our next slide, I've got just a couple more visual reminders about being proactive. So colony loss and hive collapse is happening. The whole rhetoric of a colony dying out in 1 to 2 years kind of comes from countries where Varroa has been established for a long time, like maybe North America. On the ground in southeast Queensland, I'm going to be honest, what we do see is colonies lost in as little as 5 weeks after detecting Varroa if there's no intervention. Parasitic mite syndrome, what it can look like is the symptoms of foul brood in the brood frame, and it can look like a poisoning event outside the beehive. As you see in the pictures there, there's a pile of dead bees in the lawn at the front of the beehive, or you might be seeing something similar to the other image there where there's a large number of scattered dying adult bees and immature pupae being ejected from a hive. On to the next slide, and I apologise for showing you scary things, but it is, yeah, this is what we're finding. In terms of the impact on individual bees, I'm going to borrow the very visual analogy that Rod Burke provided, that if you imagine something the size of a mud crab feeding on your liver, you probably wouldn't feel pretty good. So the impacts on an individual bee of being predated on by a mite, it decreases the bee's weight, its flight performance, its feeding, its immune function. It has increased absence from home, illness, deformities, and just generally results in a lower lifespan for an individual bee. On our next slide, you can see that once those impacts are multiplied out across the entire colony, as you can imagine, once you multiply that, you're going to have conditions of general colony decline and rapid depopulation. You just generally find that without any intervention, we get very rapid colony decline and collapse. On to the next slide. There's some highlights here. These photos show some of the symptoms and signs of a high mite infestation in a colony. You might find sick or abnormal looking or unusual appearance of brood. Kind of looks a bit like sac brood, as you can see in one of those pictures there, or AFB or maybe even EFB type appearance of the brood. You might see patchy or scattered, bald or neglected or starved or dead brood. I've got a picture there with a little bee sticking its head out with its tongue out. So that's something that I have seen. You might see a few desperate, futile attempts at supersedure in a colony where there's been no viable eggs for days. You may find crawling, shuddering bees. You may also find an increased prevalence of hive beetle and wax moth throughout the colony. So a sudden rapid depopulation or drop in the activity levels and the number of bees is really symptomatic of a very high infestation. To the next slide, I've got a couple of cases that I've noted. So in this case from the Redland area, in May the colony was moved in to the backyard, likely from a suburb where there may have been a low level of Varroa coming with the colony, but they weren't tested. In July, there were 2 mites found in an alcohol wash, so that's below a treatment threshold level, but there was no intervention, no management. By September, I found that many mites in the alcohol wash. We think that's over 500 mites. The bees were all gone, the brood was all gone. The beekeeper had to basically clean up and burn up the frames. So another case I'd like to show is from the Bayside area, Brisbane Council. This is not an image from that particular hive, but very similar. The queen was still present and laying. There was a handful of bees. We did manage to treat this colony. I cannot tell you the current status of that colony today. I wish I could. But my general point here is please be proactive. check your colonies, monitor your colonies, ask your neighbours if they need a hand monitoring their colonies, refer to the videos. Please don't wait too long. Don't keep your head in the sand too long. Please check, because if you're not checking, you're just guessing. Okay, thank you. I'm going to hand over to my colleague Gav now. Thanks for that.
Thanks, Kathy. I guess everyone's asking, sorry, I'll just grab a drink of water. Pollination season is well in here. As we know, the first month of spring has rapidly passed and as temperatures continue to rise. Many crops such as avocados, mangoes and macadamias and watermelons are now in bloom. This has prompted both commercial and recreational beekeepers to relocate their hives for pollination services. While some have travelled short distances, others have ventured much farther afield. With the increased movement of bees, the risk of unintentionally spreading Varroa mites remains ever present, which means we need to be vigilant and monitoring our hives. So the team, we've been working with pollination-reliant industries and attending and presenting at different events around the state. Some of these are Hemorrhage Research Station, Insects in Agriculture in August. We've done the Farming for Future Expo at Warwick, also in August. We also did AgroTrend here in Bundaberg with the Bundaberg Fruit and Veggie Growers in September. And we'll also be doing the AgTech Showcase in Gatton next week. Over to you, Keith.
Thanks, Gav. So I'm going to quickly talk about swarm management. So swarm management is Varroa management as you get Varroa in your environment. Feral colonies and swarms from managed colonies won't take long to collapse, as we've heard from Kathy. It doesn't take very long for unmanaged colonies to die out. And those collapsing colonies will spread Varroa to nearby managed colonies, often called mite bombs. So a few tips. I'm not going to go into how to manage swarming, but practice good swarm management to try to limit or prevent swarming from your hives. Test and treat any swarms that you do catch. And a good treatment option for swarms and broodless hives is apiboxal vaporization. It's highly effective. It drops 95% plus of the mites in those hives. Try to avoid relocating hives, and I've got an example below, from Varroa positive areas into Varroa free areas. So don't spread the pest if you can help it. Typically the best practice is to move your swarm captures to a quarantine apiary, just in case they have other diseases or pests that you don't really want to spread into your main apiary sites, such as AFB or EFB. And don't ignore swarms. If you've got an opportunity to capture swarms, capture them, treat them, monitor the pest in them, and report if you do find Varroa in those swarms. It's far better to manage those swarms than to just let them die out naturally and spread mites into the region. So the example I've got is I've got a contact on Gold Coast City Council who knows I'm a beekeeper, and he calls me regularly when there are swarms in areas that he knows have Varroa mite. There was one in Currumbin Valley that I got called out to. I went out, it's not far from where I live, I went out and caught the swarm, did a wash, and it washed 27 mites. So I collected that swarm and moved it to an already positive apiary that I have in Eleonora and treated it with vaporization. So 2 weeks later, I went back and checked the colony, made sure it was healthy. It had good brood and washed 0 mites after being in a mite positive apiary for 2 weeks. So it had maintained a low level of mites after being initially treated and having 27 mites on bees in the swarm. So it's quite an effective way to manage it. And the aim here is just to try to avoid spreading Varroa further than they normally and naturally do spread. So that's it for me. I'll hand over, I think, to Rob to do Jacob's section.
Thanks, Keith. Unfortunately, we did have a bit of a technical difficulty this evening that it wasn't allowing us to add Jacob as a presenter. So I'm going to cover off on QBA's short section. But just as we are wrapping things up, we have gone a little bit over tonight. Big thank you to the VDO and Vimiri team who've done a fantastic job. You do have a few minutes if you want to start typing some questions into the chat. I saw 1 or 2 there already. We'll get to those in a second. But for you that don't know, QBA is your Queensland Beekeeping Association. They are your peak industry body here in Queensland. Jacob Stevens is currently the Vice President of QBA and Acting President. He was going to present tonight, but I'll take over. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So it was just to hit on some key points from commercial industry. They very much align to us in the Vimiri program, just the importance of Varroa mite monitoring activities. And it should be the #1 priority for all beekeepers, basically. So really important. That's in recreational and commercial beekeepers. You should be reporting that information to B123. You got nothing to fear from us. We are not going to put intrastate movement control on. We're not going to quarantine properties. We really want to remove the stigma away from reporting positive results, both with commercial and recreational beekeepers. So report those tests to B123. Really important to stay up to date, and that's by things like this. Join your local bee club. Now's not the time to try and go solo. You want to do this, we're all in this together. Connect with others, share that knowledge with your fellow beekeepers, and keep yourself abreast of all ongoing education. And that's it from the industry perspective. But again, apologies for our little tech issue there. But if you want to start or continue putting some questions in the chat, we've probably got 5-10 minutes. Are there any there already, Sarah?
Yeah, we just had one in regards to Kathy's slide with the PMS from Artie saying, what should they have done as an intervention in the case of the previous screen? And Kathy has replied. I don't know if you want to talk to it, Kathy, or I can read it out. But
I think the key point is do something, not nothing. Have an IPM plan. Have a bit of an idea of what your options are, and do a little research so that you have a treatment plan, a management plan in place. There's plenty of different options. There's plenty of different things that the colony might have experience to help manage that level. In July, when 2 mites were detected, as I showed, by mid-September, there were hundreds of mites. They reproduce quite rapidly. So yeah, have a plan and keep monitoring regularly.
Yeah, I just reiterate what Kathy's saying there, that I think the common denominator in those things is that people weren't monitoring monthly. You're not going to get away with 16-week testing anymore. If you're in an area that has Varroa mite, you need to be checking monthly. If you wait 8 weeks, it might be too late.
Thank you. We've got one from Ernie. Long-range forecasters predict a lot of rain this summer. How will that affect the control and spread of Varroa? So if anyone wants to chime in.
I'm happy to talk to that if that's all right. So obviously we are going to have a lot of rain. We still do need to get into our hives though. Unfortunately, Varroa does not stop. As long as you've got brood in that hive, Varroa is going to multiply significantly, as Kathy and Rob just said. So a little tip, I know it's probably not the best, but I used to use gazebos. We'd fit my team under gazebos. We'd go under there. If you get a break in the rain, maybe try and get in there. If you've got aggressive queens, maybe just get rid of them and re-queen if they're not enjoying that weather. That's the kind of tips I have. I don't know if anyone else has any other tips for Ernie.
I'd just add that on the coast, that probably means, and what we're seeing in northern New South Wales already this year, is increased small hive beetle. And that's going to be a massive issue here in Queensland, is the combination of small hive beetle and Varroa. So you've really got to have that as a a more rounded integrated pest management program, that you are both treating for Varroa and small hive beetle, because if you get Varroa and you're not treating, small hive beetle is just going to finish you off very rapidly. And with an expected wet season, if you're on the coast, expect a bad year for small hive beetle, unfortunately.
Thanks for that. All right, this one's for you, Keith. If you caught a swarm which was positive for Varroa, how far away should the swarm be quarantined from your own hives?
Well, it depends how close it was to your hives when you caught it. You know, if it was next door, you've probably got mites in your hives anyway. But you know, in the case of this one with Currumbin Valley, it was a good probably 8 or 10 k's from my home site. And I just moved it into what I knew was a already Varroa positive area. Bees will travel for forage anything up to 2.5 to 3 kilometres. And as foraging bees with mites move, they will spread mites by contact with on contact to other bees. So we're seeing a natural spread of Varroa here on the Gold Coast of about 1 kilometre to 1.5 kilometres a month, maybe a little bit faster than that, and that's through B2B contact, more so than from vehicle movement, human-assisted movement. So moving bees more than 2.5 kilometres from your apiary, or keeping swarms that are mite positive more than 2.5 kilometres from your apiary, double that actually, 5 kilometres, is probably a safe bet.
Thanks for that, Keith. And thanks for all your questions. If you have any more, you can pop them in the chat, or even contact us at varroa@dpi.queensland.gov.au. I will hand over to Rob to conclude the meeting. Thank you very much.
I just want to thank everyone again for your attendance today. As we've said a couple of times tonight, now is not the time to go it alone. We really want you to be seeking out information, whether that's through us, through your local beekeeping club, through your VDO, through your newly appointed BBO. We're all in this together. We really look forward to working with you moving forward. We will probably try and host another one of these webinars in the near future, probably towards the end of the year, maybe start of summer. As always, though, any questions, contact your VDO, contact your BBO, or Varroa at dpi.qld.gov.au. And thanks again, everyone.